So I'm not sure who needs to hear this, but information is not enough. Right? I think you know this. We can watch YouTube videos, including this one. We can read books. We can go to workshops. We can attend trainings. And at the end of the day, all of that is just information. It's very clear in the Hatha Yoga texts. It says, success cannot be achieved by merely reading books, even scripture, sacred texts. Success can't be achieved through the mere acquisition of knowledge, right? Information that we put into practice, that we apply, that becomes embodied, can become wisdom, right? And of course, I think you know this. And there's a part of the mind that is constantly looking for answers, is looking for a strategy, is looking for some solution to the ailment or the problem or the issue. I remember when I was really sick, back in 2013, 2014, my body was just deteriorating from an excess of heat in my system through over-exercising, overtraining, eating the wrong food in the wrong combination for a period of time in my life that there was a lot of misunderstanding and ignorance, basically. And all of that led to a pretty severe imbalance in my system that caused my hormones to deteriorate. The secretion of hormones was completely out of whack. This threw off my whole system. My nervous system was completely wrecked. I had a test done where I was hooked up to electrodes, and it ran a electric signal through my body to determine the parasympathetic to sympathetic balance, the balance between the two aspects of the nervous system. And my sympathetic nervous system, or the sympathetic branch of my nervous system, was operating at a 95% capacity in conjunction with a 5% balance in my parasympathetic nervous system. And the naturopath I was seeing told me that it's supposed to be 40% sympathetic, 60% parasympathetic. Now, I'm not really sure how that machine determined that, and I'm not really sure how the diagnostic worked, but the message I got, and it felt true in my system, that I was operating in overdrive for too long, which led to burnout. The adrenal system was functioning on overdrive. I was overproducing cortisol for too long, and eventually my entire adrenal axis, the triangle of hormones that creates basically the stress response along with the rebuild response, because every time we produce cortisol, we have to produce a metabolic pathway that metabolizes cortisol and balances cortisol, so we can't be stressed all the time. And this throws everything out of balance. And with the interpretation of the elements and looking at how the body is a microcosm of nature, and specifically a microcosm derived from the five elemental forces, we call them the bhūtas. And these bhūtas, looking at the earth, the water, the fire, the air, the space, and how our system is built on a combination of these elements and then interacting with each other, we can start to look at how balance or imbalance occurs. And of course, this is just more information. So it doesn't necessarily mean anything unless we start to pay attention, to contemplate to inquire so that we can actually have a diagnostic of what's going on in our system and ultimately in our life. And through that diagnostic, enter into a feeling state. Okay? And this is important that we feel. And the process of feeling, to use our sensation and to use our somatic awareness to give us direct experiential information about what's happening in the present moment. This, I believe, is how we start to build a relationship to life, to reality, ultimately. Because otherwise, the actual reality remains a construct, a concept that is projected from our mind, and we create a story about what's happening. But on a feeling level, on an intuitive level, where in the immediacy of the moment something is felt, before we put a label on it, before we put any sort of story or narrative, there's a direct contact. There's what the mystics would call gnosis, right? Gnosis with the G, which is sort of like the knowing of the experience, or the I like to call it feel knowing. You know what I mean? Can you feel the difference in that? And this is, paying attention to this is like, when information comes in, are we actually feeling that information first? And ultimately, we're all doing this to some extent. That's the first order of operations. So, sensing, feeling, and then knowing, the order of operations. So we sense the thing and we feel it, but a lot of times the mind is so quick to categorize and so quick to interpret and analyze that it all of a sudden takes that feeling and it attaches a story to it. And this prevents the integration of the information into the somatic body, right? This is like, if you want to become really good at listening to someone as they share, listening from, I like to say, like listening from the spine, listening with the skin, listening with the whole body as someone shares something. And instead of, the mind often will interpret what the person is saying and then respond from a place of interpreting. You know what I mean? But if I can stay centered in myself and completely embodied and present and connected to my breath and to the energy that's flowing through me and between me and the other person, then what they share can in some way integrate with my experience completely and assimilate. And this is especially true if they're sharing something that has charge, and I can be a channel of digestion, where I can assist in the digestion of the feeling or the thing that's coming through them in their words, but is rather the energy behind their words. So I'm sharing a couple different ideas here with you as I just want to express what's coming alive through me in my practice. You know, these videos are a chance for me to think out loud. I come out here and I do my yoga sadhana every morning, and then I hit record on the camera because oftentimes there's something that I feel might be worth sharing. And the topic of not looking for information, not preventing ourselves from allowing information to be an escape or a distraction. The mind thinks it knows, right? The mind thinks it knows. It'll just tell us over and over again. It's like, oh, I know the answer. But do we really know the answer, you know? Do we really know? Because it's entirely possible that we don't. And resting in a place of not knowing, but in a place of curiosity and openness and receptivity and curiosity and wonder and awe. These qualities give us a certain presence. They award us with a certain openness and receptivity, that from that openness and from that receptivity we can soften to life and we can let energy flow. The mind is so brilliant as a tool, but oftentimes the mind blocks the flow of energy. It prevents the deeper layers from being active. It's like the mind is just one level, one layer, the mental level. In yoga, we talk about how there's multiple layers, multiple bodies, the koshas, the physical body, the energetic body, the mental body, the intuitive body, the bliss body. Going through all of those levels, and once we can pass through all of them and they're all aligned and harmonized, almost like Russian dolls, right, stacked inside of each other, then the light of the soul sits at the very core of that. And the light of the soul can then shine through those layers unobstructed. That's not information. I mean, of course, yes, what I'm sharing is information, but what does the experience of that feel like? You know, what is the reality of that? And how to turn information into actual knowing, gnosis. Yoga talked about the process of jnana yoga. This word jnana, spelled J-N with a little squiggly over it. Can't remember what that squiggly is called. You remember what that squiggly is called? I don't remember. Jnana. J-N-A-N-A. This is one of the paths to yoga seen in the classical texts, like the Bhagavad Gita. One of 4 margas. Marga means path, as a way to reunite with the source. And the question I like to ask is like, well, what is the reunion between the individual and the supreme? Why is that significant? Why would I want to do that? You know? Why would that be valuable or of value to me? You see what I mean? What significance does that have in my life? How can I live in a way where I don't pretend, where I don't create a mask, where I am authentic in every moment with myself, with others? Like, how can I do that, you know? Like, for real. And I think a lot of people are in pursuit of peace, right? I mean, I'm in pursuit of peace. Maybe you are in pursuit of peace, of self-knowledge, self-mastery, understanding. But, like, what does true peace feel like? Like, true peace. To be at peace with oneself and with one's environment. Completely. You know? For real. And is that desirable? Or is it more desirable to run on the hamster wheel? You know, like, for real. Like, these are questions that I like to ask myself, and I like to spend time in reflection thinking about, am I on the hamster wheel in some way in my life? With something, with some story, with some emotion, with some whatever it is. Am I looping? Am I repeating the past? That's one of the things that karma is responsible for. Karma. The repeat of the past until we learn the lesson and then we escape the wheel of karma. Right? Liberation. Like real liberation. Freedom. For real. This is possible. It's possible for us. This isn't something that is just a concept, you know? Although it can remain a concept, and oftentimes it does. And a lot of people practicing yoga today, without being immersed in the traditional teachings are just practicing exercise in some way. And that's not a bad thing. Exercise is a good thing. It's beautiful that we can exercise in a way that is creating harmony for ourselves, for our body, for our mind, and our breath and our energy. And it's about more than that, right? So in what ways am I just exercising? In what ways am I just pretending to know? Things like chakras, good example, right? Or various teachings in yoga. It's just like so many teacher trainings nowadays. People can pay a couple $1,000, spend a couple weeks, and be certified to teach yoga. And it's like, how much of that information ends up being embodied for real? And then they go on to teach others. But to what degree can we actually guide others if some of that information is just resting in the state of being information? At what point is there a transmission of energy that creates an actual shift, a transformation? So these are just thoughts that I have and questions that I'm asking myself, being a student and a practitioner of yoga, and also being someone who steps into the role as guiding others and teaching others. For the past 10 years I've been teaching, and man, it's been a journey, and through that time I've learned a lot, and I'm constantly learning, and I look back and I see how the things I wrote about, the things I shared about, how I shared about them, what I thought I knew back then. And geez, man, it's humbling. It's very humbling. It's very, very humbling. So nowadays, I'm a little more cautious, or try to be a little more cautious at least. Because what do I really know? And the only thing I can say for sure is I know this moment. It's the only thing I can say for sure. I know this moment right now. And I'm working every day in my own spiritual laboratory to get to know this moment, to get to know the present moment, to get to know myself in the present moment. How am I really feeling about X, Y, or Z? Like, how am I really feeling? And where am I hiding from myself still? Where am I obstructing my relationship to the present moment by being in my mind and projecting a story or some understanding on the moment instead of just feeling? Just feeling. So I'll leave you with this. These are 3 teachings I share in all my trainings and programs. Pause. Pause. Listen. Listen. Feel. Feel. And then respond. Pause. Listen. Feel. And then respond. Let the energy that arises in that space before a reaction to guide, instead of that energy that arises create a chain reaction which is impulsive or compulsive, to allow the energy to rise and to follow it. This is surrendering to God, surrendering to the divine, surrendering to the mystery, because then I don't know what will happen. It's a spontaneous, creative occurrence. If I pause, I listen, I feel, it'll teach me something. And then I'm in a state of not knowing more frequently. So I'll leave you with that. I hope you have a really beautiful day. And I look forward to seeing you for more very soon. Om Namah Shivaya.